Perhaps no American official has spent more time face to face with Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro than Roger Carstens. Carstens was America's top hostage negotiator in the Trump and Biden administrations. He freed a total of 65 Americans unjustly held in countries including Russia, Iran, and Maduro's Venezuela. Yesterday, U.S. forces captured the Venezuelan dictator and his wife. Both are in jail in New York tonight, awaiting trial on drug trafficking charges. Over the years, Roger Carstens convinced Maduro to release 20 American hostages, and in that time, Carstens got to know the man who is at the center of U.S. foreign policy tonight.
The administration would paint Maduro as a bloodthirsty drug dealer. Is that the man you knew?
I don't think so. And yet, let me answer that by this way. On one way, I could say I'm not naive to the crimes that were committed by the regime writ large. And if you're the president of a country, you of course have responsibility for what's happening in your government. On the flip side, I would say that being the person in the room with President Maduro, my job was to get Americans back, and that's best done by building a very human relationship. And in doing so, I didn't find him to be a bloodthirsty maniac. I found him to be a practical person, someone who wanted to find ways to solve the problems that were faced by his country.
When you first heard that Maduro had been captured, what did you think?
In a way, I wasn't shocked. I think probably as early as August or September, in watching the different military moves and the diplomatic moves take place, it seemed that unless he were willing to make some sort of deal or accommodation with the United States, I felt that the possibility of Delta Force showing up at 2 a.m. was very real.
Do you believe that the Maduro that you met was an international drug dealer?
From all the information that I've received, I would say no. I think the country clearly touched drugs. And there's information. I always have to be very clear that I might see certain amounts of information, and there's always a treasure trove of information that I've never seen or never will see due to classification or compartmentalization. But what I witnessed was not someone who is necessarily hardcore in the drug business, and I'll be interested to see in how the prosecution goes about proving their case.
63-year-old Nicolás Maduro was in power 12 years. In 2024, he lost his re-election bid, but remained in power and forced the winner into exile. Maduro ruled Venezuela's 28 million people as an autocrat, imprisoning his opposition and leaving the economy of an oil-rich nation in shambles. Yesterday, the U.S. Department of Justice revealed an indictment of Maduro, accusing him in a so-called narco-terrorism conspiracy.
These investigations aren't easy. They can be stressful, and they can take up a lot of time. This one, 10 plus years. And you have
one of the investigators at the center of the case was Sandy Gonzalez. He served 25 years in the Drug Enforcement Administration, part of that in Venezuela and investigating Maduro.
Close to 20 years ago, DEA at the Special Operations Division started looking at high-level drug trafficking in Venezuela. And it eventually led to high-ranking military, police officials in Venezuela, and ultimately government officials.
And Maduro was among them?
Yes.
What was the most significant evidence against Maduro?
It's a state-sponsored drug trafficking organization, so it's a massive conspiracy. And what I mean by that is not everybody is going to be holding the kilos of cocaine. But in a conspiracy, you link everybody together that's part of the chain. Maduro was part of that chain, first as a Minister of Foreign Affairs and then later as a president. So when you're the president of a country and you are giving the green light to engage in this activity and you're putting people in critical positions, in governors, ministers, heads of agencies, and allowing them to carry out these drug trafficking activities, you're just as guilty as the person making the drugs and transporting the drugs.
But is it a matter of Maduro simply looking the other way, or was he enriching himself from the drug trade?
I believe the evidence is going to show he was enriching himself. It was much more than just looking the other way. There was direct involvement.
With Maduro now gone, what in your view changes?
So it was a great step But Maduro isn't the only person in that government that was involved in drug trafficking. There are still several DEA fugitives in Venezuela in positions in that government. The job's just started.
Maduro may be gone, but the drug conspiracy remains.
Yes.
Also remaining in Venezuela are a few Americans reportedly held in prisons who were not rescued Saturday morning. Former hostage negotiator Roger Carstens told us that Maduro held and tortured Americans who had been arrested for minor offenses.
Everyone had a different story, but the bottom line is that they were arrested for something in Venezuela, and within a few days they were eventually sent to the intelligence or the military prisons in Caracas. Once in prison, then they were used as leverage by President Maduro in negotiations with the United States. But I can say, to my mind and my knowledge and having read all the intelligence, there did not seem to be a concerted program to go find Americans to use them as leverage. It's just that whenever an American was arrested, they would end up being used as leverage.
What did Maduro want in exchange?
I think initially I wasn't sure that he knew what he wanted. But eventually, meeting with President Maduro and discussing what it is that he might want, he settled on person-to-person swaps. There were a few people in U.S. prisons that he wanted to have returned, and that's what we ended up settling on over time.
How many Americans are still held there?
I don't have the numbers exactly anymore because I'm no longer in the government. But as I understand it, 4 or 5.
In your view, should they have been rescued during this military operation?
I think I would have loved to have seen that. I imagine the challenges of conducting a military hostage raid are significant. The advantage of doing it the other night when we eventually went to get Maduro is that you've already eradicated the air defense capabilities of the Venezuelan military. You've challenged their command and control architecture. So adding on an additional mission of trying to get some hostages out, that might have been doable. But where are they? So since we may not know where all of them are, you could find yourself having to hit 2, 3, or 4 objectives. And now you're taking it to a level of complexity that might have been too much for that night. It might have been just enough to get President Maduro, and then after the fact, work on trying to get the release of these remaining Americans.
To release any remaining Americans and run Venezuela, the administration is speaking to Maduro's same government, now headed by Maduro's loyal vice president, Delcy Rodriguez. The U.S. did not leave troops on the ground, and Venezuela's repressive military, intelligence, and police units are still in place. Yesterday, the president said this about Venezuela's near future.
We're going to run the country until such time as we can do a safe, proper, and judicious transition.
Democrats, including Arizona Senator Mark Kelly, are asking, what's next?
Yesterday, the president said, quote, "We're not afraid of boots on the ground."
I think right now we run the risk of Venezuela falling into some form of, chaos. I mean, who's going to run the country? Is it Delcy Rodriguez? Is it Maduro's handpicked person? Or is it a democratically elected leader? We should be on the side of democracy. I mean, we're the good guys here.
Kelly serves on the Senate Intelligence and Armed Services Committees.
Isn't removing Maduro good for U.S. national security?
I think having Maduro out of the country, now in New York, being prosecuted for his crimes is a positive thing. The big question is just what comes next and who winds up in charge in Venezuela. They weren't thinking ahead here. Now they say they're going to run the country. What does that actually mean? I think this president needs to do a much better job articulating to the American people what is the plan going forward here. And then explain to the American people, what is this really about? Is it about law enforcement? Is it about drug smuggling into the United States? Is it about regime change? Or is it about what the president said 20 times yesterday? This is about extracting mineral rights, oil, from a foreign nation. He hasn't made that clear.
Yesterday, the president said it was about drugs.
The illegitimate dictator Maduro was the kingpin of a vast criminal network responsible for trafficking colossal amounts of deadly and illicit drugs into the United States. As alleged in the indictment, He personally oversaw the vicious cartel known as Cartel de las Solas, which flooded our nation with lethal poison, responsible for the deaths of countless Americans, the many, many Americans. Hundreds of thousands over the years of Americans died because of him.
In an interview today, President Trump threatened Venezuelan Vice President Rodriguez with what he called a fate worse than Maduro's if she didn't cooperate with the United States. Roger Carstens has negotiated extensively with the Venezuelan vice president. The Venezuelan vice president is now in charge.
Yeah.
Her brother is the head of the National Assembly. Are these people that the United States can work with?
When you take a look at Delcy Rodriguez, she's a lawyer, lots of international experience, hardcore technocrat. And I would say in my meetings with her, I found her to be pragmatic and rational and reasonable.
But the vice president has said that she wants Maduro back, wants to have nothing to do with the United States going forward.
I have to wonder, is she playing to a domestic audience? Is she playing to an audience made up of the military and the intelligence community of Venezuela? I'm not sure. But what I do know is everyone's essentially going to and eventually going to have to deal with the cards that have been laid on the table. And her cards are going to be pretty tough, and that the United States right now, to my mind, has the upper hand, and she'll have to have some sort of accommodation.
You've known the Venezuelan vice president for a long time. I wonder if you've sent her a message since all this happened.
You know, I did pass a message off to her and her brother, and the message was simply like, look, if you can find a way, work towards cooperating with the United States. And I think my fear is that if the current people in charge really dig in hard, then the United States, having already eradicated Venezuela's air defense capability and shown an ability to degrade their communications modes and their command and control structures, that it'd probably be very easy for the United States to, rearm, re-up, and then go right back in to grab people. Probably be a harder legal case to make to do such a thing, but I think the right move for everyone is to just start to work together. And so the message I passed was one of simply saying, this is a time for trying to solve problems, and please be willing to and open to working with the U.S.